let's start because I want to honor you all for showing up on time. I was going to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands from where we're all calling in from today. I'm here on Dja Dja Wurrung country. If you'd like to pop in the chat the lands on which you're sitting from today, and acknowledging that sovereignty was never ceded, and that in a lot of the work that we're all doing in terms of sustainability in our businesses and in our lives, that First Nations people have been practicing that for many, many, many thousands of years, well beyond us. And so we have a lot to learn from and their custodianship. So on that note of connection to country, I thought I'd start by doing something I did with Katie, who's on the call actually, in her Resilience podcast, where a little grounding episode, activity. I'll let people in. So just a minute or two, invite you to close your eyes if you like, or if you want to just lower them, an opportunity to connect with ourselves, our bodies, and each other through the screen. So tuning into the weight of your body and how it is holding you on your chair or floor, the earth underneath, and allowing gravity to hold you. You might notice some tension in shoulders, legs, chest. See if you can give yourself permission to release a little further into the weight of your body and let gravity, let this beautiful earth hold you. And in this place of feeling held, I'd like you to tune into your breath and just notice, no need to change it. It's perfect just the way it is. Flowing in and out of your body. Just noticing it. Is there a texture to it, a pace? Maybe there's somewhere in your body where it feels most prominent. Maybe your chest. My heart's beating a little hard, a little bit nervous. Maybe it's through your nose, your belly. Allowing your breath to be exactly as it is, supporting your body, supporting your being. And bringing your attention to the fact that each of us are breathing on the screen. Shared experience that we're about to go into together. The commonality of air that we share with all living beings on the earth. And perhaps taking a little deeper breath in through your nose and out, maybe a bit of a sigh, maybe a bit of a shake or move of the body as you bring yourself back to these beautiful faces on the screen.
So good, Luce. Thank you. It's too calm.
There was a few people who joined throughout that, so welcome. Hope you got some of the practice.
Good.
So we're going to start by doing a brief introduction of ourselves, and some of you know us already, but Koren, would you like to give a minute intro to who you are?
Yeah, for sure. And maybe for those of you on the call, if you want to, over the next couple of minutes, just pop in the chat, like what kind of business you have, the size, whether it's a product or service, and we'll have a bit of a look at that as well and sort of tailor what we're saying to help you most, hopefully. But yeah, I'm a permaculture gardener. I'm a journalist for the ABC and The Guardian. I do sustainable city living workshops here in Tandanya, Adelaide. And I also have my own permaculture infused digital marketing company, which I launched in 2013, which is like frighteningly long time ago. But the whole aim of that is helping people like you, like small business owners, ethically minded business owners, communicate more effectively online, so that you can like amplify your impact without all of that icky hard sell that doesn't feel right, you know, to you, and doesn't feel right to your customers and clients either. It's me. What about you, Liz?
Very similar from a values and ethics perspective. But I've worked in like a combination of nonprofits and from the spectrum of nonprofit to corporate America in my life, which is a pretty big spectrum. And through that, have been really interested in how business can be used as a force for good, and knowing that the business is ultimately run by people. And so how can we support the people within businesses, and how can people shape business in order to have a greater impact on the planet? It's certainly been a journey of wrestling with that, of feeling like, you know, capitalism is the root of all evil. So, but making a conscious choice to engage with that, and as much as that can feel quite like violent or scary at times, trying to embrace or accept more so where we're at, and how I and then the businesses that I work with as a business mentor or strategist can help shape businesses as a force for good.
Very good. Yeah, I guess that's a good partnership, isn't it? So Lucy's sort of coming at it from the business and strategy perspective, and I'm coming at it from the marketing side of things. So it really felt like we had this great kind of opportunity to talk to you about two things that are so important for, yeah, being successful, but also, you know, running a sustainable business. So yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. Okay. So, hello, Kate. Thanks. Welcome. So we're talking about, you know, sustainability, the personal, the financial, and the environmental sustainability of running a small business. So we're going to break this up into those three sections: personal, financial, and sustainability. So let's start with personal. And I feel like along the way, if you do have a burning question you want to interact us with, then like put your hand up, or you can pop it in the chat. If we do miss it, just forgive us. We'll have Q&A at the end. But yeah, we're going to start by sort of like interviewing each other a little bit around how we have learned to integrate personal, financial, and environmental sustainability into our businesses. So starting with personal sustainability, we thought about this idea of like the inner world, and how do you look after yourself? So Koren, if I can throw that to you, of like, what do you do to look after yourself and build personal sustainability?
Yeah, I feel like this is such an important piece that often gets skipped over, because like your business and your ability to be successful, be confident, be out there in your business is kind of like restricted by your internal world, like how much confidence you have, how much you know yourself, all of that kind of thing. So I feel like focusing on the personal first gives you kind of like the deep why. Why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Beyond just like, I need to make money, I'm going to live in a capitalist society. Like, what is the deeper why beneath that? And also some of the how, like what sort of structures do I need personally around myself for this to be manageable? So I guess on the topic of the why, for me, a lot of that came down to values. And I always talk about values as though they were this thing that I just invented and hooray, I know them and on we go. But it's so iterative and something that, you know, you really do develop over years and years and years. But I think the holistic decision-making framework that Dan Palmer used to teach has been pivotal for me. I mean, he's no longer with us, but thankfully his body of work remains online that you can refer to. So for me, like, yes, I want to, I want to be like financially stable and all of that sort of thing. But some of my deeper values are like, I want to explore what business is like when I'm time rich and unrushed. I want to help people who are engaging in climate positive solutions in the future. I want to inspire people to live more sustainably in the city, like all of these kinds of things. So that really helps me figure out what I want to do in my business beyond just like marketing. It's like it gives me this pathway. And then the how becomes about, well, who am I as a person and what supports do I need? So I guess like for me, there's one of my big things is energetic capacity. So I've been experimenting a lot with like, okay, maybe I don't have the same amount of energetic capacity that a neurotypical person has. What can I do in my world to still make that manageable? And, it's stuff like time blocking, leaving big sections of time unscheduled, like I have a Friday off so that I can have a recovery essentially from the work week. But even things like structure, like we were talking last week, I think, Luce, and I was like, oh, I've got to get that into Asana. And you were like, oh, Asana, oh, cringe. And it's just really interesting to remember, like, oh, that works so well for me. And I essentially outsource my brain to Asana and can't imagine a world where not everything is in there. But, different people are different. So it's just around like understanding what you need to actually make it successful, because whether you're like a one person business or you've got staff, if you know how you operate, you can set up structures that make it easier for either yourself or for the people who work beneath you, because you're clearer and that sort of thing. Does that answer the question?
For sure. Yeah. So you spoke about like values, having structure, creating time for rest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Um, Something that you brought this up in our planning conversation, which I loved, was about like, how do you run your business differently? And like the idea of permaculture is like that little, like separating from the traditional capitalist and like hierarchical patriarchal ways, like as part of looking after yourself, how do you manage that different, like that tension and the difference, and knowing that you're doing things differently? And have you come across like people being like judging you for that?
Yeah, definitely. Especially like older men have, I've had sort of the like almost like you can't do it that way, silly little girl approaches sometimes, which is pretty annoying. So yeah, I think there's a lot of resilience that you have to cultivate there. And honestly, some of the things that have been so useful for me have been therapy. Like there's this really amazing system or therapeutical approach called internal family systems. I think it's something you navigate with a counselor. It's not really something you do on your own, but it helps you understand like all of the different parts within yourself and how they're reacting to, things that are happening externally. And that's been really helpful because I'm now more able to go, oh, a part of me is really fucked off at that, CEO who was like quite dismissive of me. But I can still kind of remain in my more adult center and work with that. So yeah, those sorts of things have been really good. I also love Kristen Neff's self-compassion work. She has some meditations that are like really great for when you're really overwhelmed. So I find this happens a lot in business. Like you don't expect it to. You're just like, oh, I'm going to start my own business. Yay. And then all of these things come up that are really kind of confronting. Like maybe you're managing a challenging client, or you're not making enough money, or someone doesn't like the work you did, or, all of these things are things you have to learn to manage personally, and you can't be sustainable if you don't have that internal resource. So yeah, sometimes if I get an email that really like upsets me, I'll just hit pause, go lie in the lounge room and listen to like a meditation for working through feelings in my body before I reply to the email, which I feel like that's kind of a different approach. But yeah, the other thing I'd say is like find like-minded people that you can vent to, like my sister, for example, is really like-minded. And if I get one of those interactions, I'll message her, and she'll immediately kind of come back and be like, it's okay, we're doing it differently. You can't expect those sorts of people to understand. So it's sort of like protecting the kernel of what you're trying to create with, oh my gosh, this is like such a permaculture metaphor. It's like, adding all the nutrients of all the good people around it. so that it's protected and can grow rather than letting, you know, these external forces sort of knock you over, I guess. But one thing, Lucy, you've mentioned before that I really liked the concept of was like understanding your own risk appetite. Do you want to speak to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think and there's some really great comments happening that I'm going to roll from that into yeah, personal, in terms of personal sustainability, like running, I'm sure you're like running your own business, you've experienced that there's lots of challenges, and because like personal world and business world in a small business are so intertwined, and there's not always the financial stability or reliability or that paycheck coming in from someone else. It's not even necessarily superannuation coming in from someone else. You got to do that yourself. So thinking about your risk appetite and how much as an individual you have the capacity to sit in some of that unknown, I think can be really useful, especially if you're looking at, say, like expanding or taking on like investing into, like one of my clients was like, I'm thinking about spending $2,000 on new fences for their goat business. And I was like, so if you're about to make an investment, it's like, okay, cool. Well, how does that impact the greater financial situation that you're in with, and that might include kids and family, or mortgages. We can get that. We'll come back to more of that in like the financial section, but having a sense of risk appetite is important, and also knowing, like how you said, Koren, values change, and it's like this evolving thing. I think risk appetite absolutely changes too, and I'm going to use that as my segue into some of the conversations that's happening in the chat around phase of life and hormonal changes in life, because that absolutely can impact capacity to hold uncertainty or the amount of things in life. So factoring all of that in, and taking that on a more sort of philosophical level, this idea of phase of life, I find can be really helpful in personal sustainability. And it's often what I do with my clients that I work with is they come to me with like a specific problem or questions, or there's things like they're at a tension point, and we can like work around like at the micro level, like what are some of the really practical things, like you mentioned, structure and task management and that kind of thing. And then it can also be really helpful to step back and look at what's this bigger phase of life that I'm in. And it could be really obvious, like something like perimenopause or menopause, where there's like a hormonal change, but it can also be less obvious as well, like an identity crisis, or a quarter life crisis, or midlife crisis, or it can even be I've seen like going through a breakup, or moving house, or reestablishing yourself in a new area of work. And just knowing that change process is a very personal thing, where there's a lot that is like, change is so powerful, and it's amazing. There's all this stuff that's growing and appearing, and you get to experience all these new things. And there's also loss, even if it's like a welcome change or something that you've consciously or purposefully been working towards. There's also like quite a deep loss that comes with change. And so creating space to, on a personal sustainability level, to acknowledge that loss. And everyone has their own way of doing that, whether it's like journaling, sometimes it's grief rituals, or just being able to like sit with some of those more uncomfortable feelings.
I really love that, because it's talking about treating yourself as a human inside your business. Like there's so many times where the corporate world feels really dehumanized, really almost like mechanized, like 9 to 5, must be the same, turn up the same way every single day. But it's not the reality for most people, and especially for women, given all the different cycles and things that we go through. And I guess this conversation is kind of about like, rather than trying to push that to one side and be like, oh, that's so annoying that I'm like that. It's like, how can you fully embrace it and it becomes part of your business? Like even to the point where you talk about it publicly, potentially, if it's sort of something that aligns with your values and kind of connects with the work that you're doing. Because yeah, that's how you get sustainability on a personal level in your business, is by being honest with yourself about who you are and what you need and what's going on for you, and then embracing it, like making accommodations for it rather than just stuffing it to the side and hoping it'll go away, because it doesn't.
Yeah, embracing the humanity.
Yeah.
Just as like a kind of sense check with where everyone's at. Does that resonate? How are we going? Questions, thoughts? Yeah, cool. Just acknowledging that you're all there. It's not just us two having a great yarn. Something that, like, if you've followed my work, you might have heard me talk about business as soul work, and like our own business as a path to personal growth. And this is probably like a little bit of a spiritual aspect, which may not resonate for people, and that's like totally cool. I guess like in my experience for myself is that there's sort of like a how do I describe it? Like a greater like unfolding of who I am. Like I'm this unique DNA, this unique person. And so much of like, as I get older, my life is just like figuring out who that is and then how to keep stepping into that. And the fact that I dreamed up like this is my business is unique to me. Like I didn't want to be an astronaut. I didn't want to be a marine biologist. Like there's like this whole spectrum of worldly things that like I could have been, but this is what I chose. And so trusting that and stepping into it, I sort of like to see it as a bit of a curriculum, a life curriculum. And that certainly makes like the challenges like a bit easier sometimes, of like, okay, this is part of my personal growth. This is how I can grow and step into like my bigger like life's purpose. And so I offer that as a framework of like that business can be a path to personal growth and soul work. And also I want to offer that it's also not, because it can be really hard to tie. I'm sure if you're all running your own businesses, you will have experienced this at some point. Of it can be really hard to tie your identity to your work, and that like at times when yes there's rent to pay, bills to pay, kids to feed, that there actually can be useful at times to have the separation of like, this is my work. It doesn't have to fulfill my deepest desires all the time. I can do that in my outside of my business, in my life as well.
But I like that thought of business as soul work or as a personal growth method, because it kind of means that when you are faced with something really challenging, I don't know, for me, I'm less like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I so upset by this or whatever? And more like, okay, this is the work. So what tools have I got in my toolkit to actually deal with this? And I think that's sort of, so much of business is like, oh, do you use Xero, or, like really practical like stuff. But you can have all of these internal tools as well, that, yeah, like, I don't know, meditation or mindfulness or journaling, or like the internal family system stuff, or I don't know, even just going for a walk when you feel really overwhelmed. Like all of those, you can sort of create like a tool list for yourself, where you recognize like, I'm actually a really key player here. I need to remain, centered and together. So what are the tools that I'm going to use when I'm not? And I guess like they can look like really practical things. Like I was talking earlier about that energetic capacity, and now I take these quarterly rest weeks, so a week off every quarter, and that's really practical. It works really well for me, but it's also become something that I can communicate out publicly and be part of that discourse about how do you do business differently, or how can we approach business differently. So it can kind of become I don't really want to say a marketing point, because that sounds kind of like, ugh, you know, that gives me the ick a little bit. But, you know, it's like you're literally just telling people how you work in a way that is helpful. It's like, well, here's one way of doing it. Maybe you might like that too. And I feel like there's all sorts of opportunities when you start to make accommodations for yourself to talk about it publicly, in ways that your ideal client or patient or whatever might resonate with. So then that actually helps the financial stability of your business as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Koren. And on that note of a toolkit, I'll give you a sneak. You guys are going to all receive this. So yeah, we've put together some resources around personal sustainability that links and ideas and things to explore a little further. Yeah. So looking at the time, should we move on to financial sustainability?
Do it.
Yes. Okay, let me bring up my notes because I just lost them.
This is such a key one, isn't it? And I think you spoke so beautifully to that in your intro, Lucy, like the I don't even know what the word is, like friction, I guess, of the world we live in being a capitalist society, and knowing all of the difficulty and challenges and wrong that brings, but also the great good that you can do if you do have a financially stable business. Like the fact that you're actually able to do more good in the world if you're financially stable. So it's a real tension to hold.
Yeah, and when I first started my business, I mean, I've had an ABN since I was 16 and I was teaching dance. So I don't know when I started my business exactly, but let's say in the last 5 years of this chapter, I was thinking that like I was in a big phase of like social justice and feeling like the importance of equity in the world. And I actually went through a phase of like quite rejecting money quite a lot and feeling like, okay, well, I have some savings, so I'll rely on that. I'll just live really frugally. The Art of Frugal Hedonism is Koren's favorite book, and that's definitely in our resource list for you on that. But think when rejecting money, I actually it was a you know, there's a privilege in my ability you know, to go on that journey, but I began to feel quite unsafe, and feeling like this was during COVID as well, so isolation and like feeling like, and this was for me, other people might not experience this, but for me, the further I got away from those bigger systems, I felt like there was a degree of I don't have all the resources to support myself. Like I don't own land, I don't grow all my own food, I don't have like this infrastructure that helps me disconnect from money as a system. And over the last years, I've built greater capacity to be more disconnected. But I also very much like still play in that world. And on the idea of like equity, I realized if equity in terms of financial distribution of the world, and one of like my life goals is to be a part of redistributing wealth, is that I actually have to embody a healthy amount of wealth. And that includes like for people who say have less money than me, is being able to embody like, okay, or to show them of like, this is what I believe is a healthy amount of wealth. And for people who I work with who have way more money than me, is to say, look, hey, look, I'm happy and I live a great life. Like this is a healthy amount of wealth. So that's part of like my like ethos around equity, and it also is like my way of feeling comfortable with charging, and you know, charging a good amount and charging enough that allows me to live like a healthy living wage.
Yeah, that's so important. I think it's really hard to feel stable and to be able to do good in the world when you're financially stressed. Like it just, all of that stuff we were talking about before, that that the sort of personal anguish that you go through is exacerbated if your underlying sort of currency is I don't have enough money, I don't have enough money. So Yeah, and I also feel like it's something we often miss. Like Lucy, you've talked about this before, and I love the this sort of analogy of like we need more trellising around our financial kind of world, that, you know, like a lot of us go into business wanting to do good, but we don't have the financial skills to kind of hold. Do you want to speak to that actually a little bit, that idea of trellising? Because I love the metaphor. It's really beautiful.
Yes, it came to me as during tomato season, as maybe you can imagine. It was last tomato season.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I guess this is like the more kind of like hard skills or tangible skills around money. And yeah, so knowing how to budget. And I think like running a small business, running your own business, budgeting can actually be quite simple. I actually find it really enjoyable. I find it really empowering to like have my budget. I use, so, you know, budgets are often used to predict income. If I have this many clients or I do this much service work, like, then this is how much money. You also predict your expenses. And so, you know, and then when you marry up your income and your expenses and there's a healthy profit line at the end, that's a great budget. But you can also use a budget, especially in a smaller business, to track your actuals as well. So one month you might have budgeted for $5,000 to come in, but actually $6,000 came in. And so you can add that into your spreadsheet and then start to track things in real time. Same with expenses. You might, oh, there was an extra bill that you didn't expect. And so that goes in there, or you thought it was going to come in May, but it actually came in March. You add that in so you can actually track in real time as well. So having that as a trellis to support the healthy growth of things and to be like aware and honest with where you're at, is really helpful. And I'd just say, like you mentioned, Koren, internal family systems before, which is this therapeutic tool, and I know we have psychotherapists on the call, so you're the expert there, Kate. But thinking about these different, and I'm probably not an official definition of it, but that we have these different parts of us who we're in relationship with, and that includes like money. Like, we are in a relationship with money. And so thinking about taking some time to reflect on what your relationship is with money, and what are the parts of you that love money, what are the parts of you that judge money, that hate money, that are just like, no thanks, I'm going to avoid that. Beginning to bring awareness to your relationship with money, and like starting to tease out some of the details of that.
Yeah, I really like that. I think if you think about one of the permaculture principles, observe and interact, I think that aligns really beautifully with budgeting, because what you're doing is literally observing. You're observing all of your inputs and your outputs, and you're interacting with them like, oh, actually, I'm spending way more than I'm earning. I need to change that or whatever. But it's just about kind of being honest. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know much about money, or I don't know how to budget. I'm just not going to worry and hope it all, you know, comes out in the wash. But it's actually really empowering to understand where it's all going and how it's interacting. I really like that. So in permaculture design, you can do like an inputs and outputs analysis. So often it's, you know, in a garden context, but inputs is literally just like your needs and your costs, like material, staff costs, marketing costs, all of that kind of stuff, power, internet, website hosting, all of that. And then your outputs are your yield, your income, like your revenue streams and that sort of thing. So, you know, just like you would in a normal budget, you're tracking all of that. But the extra step that I love that permaculture can apply to this is you then look at where you can stack functions. So this is kind of like a core tenet of permaculture. Like, how can I make one thing serve multiple functions? And so as an example, I got Xero, the accounting software, last year. I was like, okay, invoicing was doing my head in. I can't get my BAS in on time, all of that kind of stuff. I need a system for this. but I didn't want it to serve just that one purpose. I was like, that's just quite a lot of money each month. Like, can I stack another function onto that? And so I had a look in and found that there was a time tracking plugin. And I was like, oh, well, this solves another problem in my business of how to track the time that I'm spending on each project. And then, oh, it has another function. At the end of the year, I'll be able to roll up all my time and do some comms around, I did X number of hours pro bono, or, there's sort of, so suddenly out of that one thing that I am paying for once, there's 3 functions. And so I think when you're looking at budgeting, like, yeah, definitely look at, how much you're earning and all of that sort of stuff. That's really important. But if you can start to look at the interplay between things, sort of move out of that reductionism of like, oh, it does that one thing, and start to look at, well, where are some more functions I can stack on that? And it could be as simple as like, oh, well, it's it allows me to connect with people. Like, I don't know, I pay for a networking membership, but it also gives me connection. Great, 2 functions, like, wonderful. But yeah, I guess that's sort of a way to, well, for me, it was a way of helping the finances feel a bit more like, I don't know, ethical, tangible, like they were doing a bit more for me than just a straight budget. But yeah, having a budget, oh my gosh, like, life-changing. I wondered, Lucy, while we're talking about sort of like the nuts and bolts of finances, like, it seems to me that some of the work you do with your clients is helping them figure out what they should actually sell, like, what service or what product, and that sometimes people come to me saying like, help, and it's like, no, I can help you with the next step, like how to get it out there. But yeah, do you want to speak to that a little bit, Lucy, on how people can figure out like what on earth they should sell, how to charge for it, that sort of thing?
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's not a super simple answer, but I'll do my best to try and sum it up, because I often work very intuitively with people in this way. But to me, in terms of like packaging up a product or a service, one of the things I think is really great to ask is like, what's obvious to me? Because like, you talking about stacking functions just before, Koren, is obvious to you because you're so deep in this permaculture world and you're living it every day. For me, I'm like a bit permaculture adjacent, and I don't always don't always go there. And so like what's obvious to you is not obvious to me. So in terms of like when you think about bringing yourself to the world, it can be, yeah, what's obvious to you? What do you love doing? What do you want to do? What are the things that you're really good at? And it can maybe be helpful to do a bit of like question asking around this, whether it's with people in your life, clients that you have as well, or even more broader, if you're comfortable on social media, like asking your broader kind of marketing audience of like, what do you, trying to get that external perspective of how people see and perceive you, because that will be really good clues and insights as to what people are resonating with you in terms of what they want you to offer. And so there's this balance between, and I'd love to hear the permaculture term for this, is what, like, kind of like, what does the world, you or me, and what is, back to business as soul work, what is ripe and ready in me to give? Is there a permaculture term for that?
I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that one. I'll take it on notice. I'll let my brain
Okay.
work away on it.
Part of it is like it's collecting. There's a way, it's like almost like collecting data, and like that observing and interacting, that I know is part of permaculture, of like observing and interacting with your external environment, but then seeing how it's in relationship with your internal world. In terms of then like packaging that up into something that's more neat, that could go on like an Instagram tile or a website page. It's also thinking about how it fits into your bigger business strategy too. So like, how does it might fit in with like other offerings? What's its earning capacity? How much time does it take? how much capacity do you have to do it? So there might be something that you really love doing and you don't really need to be paid for it. And so you're happy to do, like you mentioned, pro bono work, Koren, or it might be something to do more like creative work where you have time and space that's allocated just to do that. There might be something that you really love doing, but it takes a lot of like I actually really like writing website copy for people, but it's hard. It's hard for me to like, not for you, Katie, because you're a genius. She's shaking her head. It's hard to like get the words all into this like neat 2 sentences that are, you know, and so I'm like, oh, I can only do so many of them a year, or definitely only one at a time.
Yeah.
And it also, depending on who you work with, probably doesn't pay that great because and so there's like a sort of limit to that. Then so summarizing what I said, it's like considering your own personal affiliation with something, what the market needs, and then your capacity, time, and then also what it costs to do as well. So essentially, it doesn't cost me anything to write words other than like my time and my energy, but I don't need any like cost of goods in order to do that.
Yeah, and that kind of reflection from your community can be super important. Like, just as a quick anecdote, I've been trying to move my business from selling time for hours to more package-based stuff. And gosh, this has been like a growth, learning and a growth thing, really tricky. But I had a few friends and a few different clients say like, oh, I reckon you should do coaching. Like, you know, not as your core thing, but, you know, allow people to sit down with you for, you know, a digital marketing one-to-one. And then I went and did some business coaching with someone, and she was like, that's not scalable, like, scratch it, no. And I was like, disappointed. And I sat with that disappointment for about a month. And then I was like, actually, I don't have to listen to her. I'm getting external validation that this is something that people want. And I felt disappointed when I couldn't do it. Like, all signs are pointing to yes, like I should just do this. So, and I guess the other piece that I've been learning in that, and this is what I've observed, you know, I work in a lot of other people's businesses, and that's really cool because you get to see how other people do things. And one of the big learnings I've had is like, it's kind of all an experiment. Like, I remember working with this photographer, and she, you know, was trying a package, and then she was like, oh, no one wanted it, so I just changed it. And I was like, oh, like, but don't people expect? And she's like, no, they don't remember, it's fine. And I was like, well, that's obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me. So yeah, I guess in the background of my business over the past year, I've been testing all of these packages and getting them almost to the point where they're ready to go out and kind of have a public life. But yeah, I guess it's just a reminder, like, you can have a bit of a play, and your pricing doesn't have to be final. Like, I've created a few packages, done a couple, and gone, oh, it takes me way longer than I thought. That price isn't reflective. So I either need to take something out so it can remain the same price, or increase the price so I'm getting, you know, fairly remunerated for my time. So yeah, there's kind of a bit of experimentation that goes on there, and it doesn't have to happen in the public eye. Like, you know, I think like I'm kind of like a terrible marketer in the sense that I don't have any of my packages on my website yet, but that's deliberate because I've been testing them in the background in this sort of safe one-to-one environment where I can get them, you know, really, really sharp, develop all of the processes around them, fix any little issues that people are having where they don't understand or whatever. So when I'm ready to put it up online, it can be, you know, I can have more confidence in what I'm offering, which I suppose is like a slower way of doing business too. You know, we're sort of, I really hate that like go fast, break things mentality. It's like, great, that works for some people, but I much prefer to go slow and kind of figure it out. So yeah, I guess that was sort of a piece for anyone who's feeling like, oh, I should have it already all done, or I need to finish it now, or whatever. It's like, yeah, it can be really iterative, and it's quite beautiful what you learn as you slowly, I guess, figure out your way through packages or products or whatever it is you're selling.
It comes back to what you said in the personal sustainability about like owning your humanity, like owning owning the pace that feels good,
Yeah.
and the testing and learning. Like we're just all in progress. Like we're all living this moment for the first time.
Yeah.
And
Oh, and there's a
yeah,
permaculture principle for that too. So what is it? Apply self-regulation and accept feedback. So I guess that's kind of that. I'm applying the self-regulation of not just going nuts by getting everything out there, and then accepting the feedback of clients. You can permaculture anything. It's great.
So I need to take you up on your one-on-one coaching, Koren, for this group, because once we have our packaging, our products and services packaged, part of earning money in this financial sustainability is getting it out into the world. So what are some of your approaches to marketing and social media that you'd have to share?
Well, I think a lot of people think they have to be everywhere. There's all of this, often American advice, which they have a pretty different way of going about things than we do here in Australia, but we all just take it on board. Like, you've got to be everywhere, you've got to post a million times, and it's just really overwhelming and kind of unsuccessful as well. So whenever I'm doing marketing strategy with anyone, I always incorporate a time budget in the strategy. And it's so interesting. I get so much pushback on this time budget. Like, people want to edit it out, or they want to, they'll estimate, and the estimates are wildly inaccurate, like so low, that'll take me 10 minutes where it's like an hour task or whatever. And I just think that's so interesting, because we're constantly overestimating how much we can actually do. So that's where I'd start with marketing, is figuring out how much time you have each week. And it's exactly that inputs, outputs, budgeting for finance that we were doing before, just figuring out, well, how many hours do you have to work that you get paid for? What, like pro bono or barter or unbillable time, like admin and invoicing and all of that, how long does that take you? How many hours can you actually work a week? Like, I can't do a 40-hour work week. That's been pretty hard to accept, but okay, finally got there. And then, okay, well, there's this chunk of time left for marketing. And for me, it's actually really little. I think I've got something like 2 hours of business development time a week and 2 hours of marketing time. And that's nothing really. It's definitely not enough. I need to tweak the budget there, but it's the same way that when you're honest about your finances, if you're honest about how much time you have for marketing, you can make much better decisions. So, in that 2 hours, I'm like, well, I really want to write a book. It's looking like it's going to happen sooner or later. So there's a lot of value for me in being on social media and having a large and engaged following. So I've stacked a function there. I'm not just on social media for, followers. I'm there because it helps me gets clients. I get a lot of client work through social media, and it will be advantageous to a publisher considering whether they want to take on my book or not. So that ticks for me. It's like, I don't love it. It's very time consuming, energy consuming, but there's at least 2 to 3 plus community connection, all of that. I'm like, that's all right. That's enough functions stacked. But I've also just done this really great SEO course. I'm like, wow, that is a much more, what would you say, like long-term strategy. So I'm already thinking, how can I adjust my marketing budget, time budget, to give myself a little bit more time to spend on SEO, or a little bit less time on social media or something like that. So yeah, I guess if if I was working with one of you good folks here on the call, that would be where I'd start. Well, how much time do you actually have? Maybe look at what's working for you now. Like, where are you getting clients, or where are you selling products already? Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can kind of go all in on that, and then you can figure out with the time you've got left where a good place to be is. And it is pretty. I think it's pretty individual. Like, it depends a little bit on what you like to do, where your skills lie. Like, maybe you're a great photographer but not great with words, or you're really good at video, or you love writing long form newsletters. Like, all of that kind of stuff has an impact. But I guess no matter where you are, the other thing I would say about marketing your product or service effectively is like, we often get hung up on what we're selling. It's this, it includes this, these are the features and stuff like that. And that's great. Like, you need that clarity. But the why is often more of the reason why people buy. So if we go all the way back to personal sustainability, like, you've hopefully already got some of that deeper why under your belt. And so if you can thread that in to anywhere that you're talking about what you're offering, you're almost certainly going to have more success. The caveat there is that you want to be talking about your why from the perspective of the viewer. So I can't remember the ratio. I think it's the 80-20 rule, where you literally write a piece of copy and then you count up how many times you've used like we and me and I versus how many times you've used like you and I don't know, whatever else versions of that there are, and try to make sure that the ratio is much higher of yous versus I's. And that's kind of a simple way to make sure that you're speaking from the reader's perspective, I guess. So yeah, it's sort of like, okay, I'm offering this service. Obviously, I want to make money. That's important in this capitalist society. But there's this deeper why, and here it is, and this is how it will help you, or this is what I'm aiming to do. That's a long-term strategy. Like, that's not something that someone's going to read once and instantly be like, oh, amazing, book in. But you're starting to develop like deeper relationships. And then there's a tipping point where people kind of just get it. And they're like, oh, you're the person who does this service because of this reason. And then it kind of all starts to flow, but you kind of need that consistency, and you need to know why you're doing it. So yeah, don't know, got on a bit of a ramble there, but anyway.
Oh, so good. So good. Please do the one-on-one coaching. Yeah. big yes from this audience.
Thanks.
I really liked what you were saying about long-term marketing. And I think in my experience, there's been a bit of relief settling into that of knowing, like, again, and I also love the distinction between American ways, because that, listening to that narrative, it's been easy for me to think in the past that, oh, if I just like do all these things and like boom, bang, everything's going to happen.
Yeah.
And also it's like, well, but actually, is that the way that I work? Like, the earth has been around for 4.5 billion years. Like, things actually happen very slowly a lot of the time. And so being a little bit more settled in myself of playing the long game. Obviously, you do need immediate wins and immediate money, immediate cash coming in. So like, that's it's important to not forget that. But yeah, it's kind of calmer for my nervous system to know that, all right, even though I'm doing these things and it's not necessarily like taking off or getting traditional measures of success happening, there's this like slow burn of presence and reliability and relationships that I'm building with both myself, my audience, and then also the algorithm of, like, whether that's the social media algorithm or the SEO search engine. So it's like, I love that the term for SEO, or like for a website, is you build authority with the search engine. And so it's I don't know, there's something like quite beautiful about that word. It's taking out of the weird tech thing of like, it's like building authority within yourself as like a person who is knowledgeable and has a service to offer and is sticking around in that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in all of that, it's a good idea to think about what metrics you're using for success. Like, you know, you might have an Instagram post that gets 13 likes, but if you book a client from that, is that a success or a failure? I'd argue that that's a much bigger success than something that gets 350 likes, but you never see any kind of business win from that. So yeah, there's that sort of deeper, more values-based talk. It is a slow burn, and it might be quite quiet for a while. Like, you might think, oh, no one's really responding to this, but you start to get the signposts of like, I'm getting more people messaging me and having conversations with me about this, or sending me links. I thought you'd like this. I know you're into this kind of thing, or whatever. So you can sort of, rather than looking at all of those, like what they call vanity metrics, you can be a bit more intentional about what you choose to focus on as a success metric. Like, is it these beautiful conversations that are developing relationships? Is it a booking? yeah, all of those sorts of things important too, I think.
So looking at the time, should we move on to environmental sustainability? Because also want time for questions.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds great. Oh, do you want to pop the resources up for a quick moment in the sunshine?
Oh my gosh, no. 1 sec.
I'm so glad Lucy is driving this. I get like utter paranoia and panic about driving like Zoom stuff. So
Oh gosh, okay, here we go. Because I'm switching between my notes and the presentation, but here we go. So again, yeah, you'll receive these, but we've got everything from like some permaculture books, including we've got Koren, like philosophies around like economics, like donut economics, and where's the other one? The planetary. Oh, no, that's the next one. Planetary boundaries. These like we've got also some really great, let's call them influencers online, and the way that they approach digital marketing, storytelling, and finances. Yeah, George Cow's great. Dajé is awesome. Yeah, anything to add there, Cora?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that one there under the business mentoring, that federal government's digital solutions program. That's a really good one for practical tools. So like I need to learn how to budget, or I'm not sure how, I know what I'm doing, but the packages, I need help with the packages or whatever. So I think it's quite cheap. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think you get like 3 sessions for $100 or something like that. So it's a subsidized program. It's not the sort of work that Lucy does, which is sort of more of that, you know, like really intentional, deep work. But if you're just like, I need help getting Xero off the ground or making my budget or whatever, they'll connect you with like an accountant and you can sit down and do that. So I found that really helpful over the past year as I've sort of tried to shift my business into a different way of being, just getting some practical and cheap help for, you know, skills I didn't have.
Okay, so environmental sustainability. This is a really interesting one when you're running a small business, because there's generally pretty low impact. So it can be a lot, like especially if you're not, I think most of the people I can see here are selling services rather than products. Obviously, if you're selling a product, there's lots to consider around like the packaging or where you're getting your goods, your physical goods from. And the supply chains and things like that around that. But when it's a service, it's a bit more nuanced, and it can become a bit more around like your personal ethics and the way that you run, you want to run your business. So Koren, you talk a lot about like measuring decisions against the triple bottom line. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that's sort of like an economic term that ties in perfectly with permaculture, because it's essentially saying, you know, permaculture's 3 ethics of earth care, people care, fair share. So it essentially means that whatever you're doing in your business, you're looking to ensure that all 3 of those elements are ticked off, I guess, you know, that it's helpful or not destructive to the planet, that it's caring of yourself and the community around you, and that you're, you know, not hoarding, you're sharing your abundance and your wealth and that sort of thing. So I find that to be quite an interesting one to apply. Like even if I take that ethic of fair share, that informs a lot of what I try to do around pro bono work. Again, there's a time budget, and a lot of the pro bono work that I do actually is workshops, because often it's local community groups who can't afford to pay, you know, for a workshop. And I just know how much time each month I can dedicate to that. And then, you know, if someone comes in and it's like, sorry, the budget for pro bono workshops this month is done or whatever. So you can be very boundaried around it, which is helpful. But you still kind of have that in your mind. So you're not only considering financial security as the measure of your business's success. Yeah, does that explain it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about some of the more practical ways of like you're quite experienced in like understanding like the tech and data hosting and that side of things and how it impacts the environment?
Yeah, I did a story for The Guardian last year on data, on cloud, like where we keep everything in the cloud and the huge data centers and their terrifying environmental impact. And that was really eye-opening. So I guess I kind of wanted to mention that here, because when we think about triple bottom line businesses, we often think about the way that we go, the way that we put our services or products out into the world, which is obviously hugely important. That's a key thing. But I guess I would encourage you to think about the way you run your business internally as well, because that has a huge impact. So that can be, everything like, who do you bank with? Do they invest in fossil fuels and arms? Where's your superannuation? If you've got staff, which super fund are you paying that into? If you've got a website, where is it hosted? That one's actually still really tricky. And if you're on Squarespace, sorry, there's no good option yet. Hopefully sometime soon there will be. But it's good to have the conversation at least, email your data provider. The more of us who do, the more they're going to be like, oh, okay, this is something I need to get better at. And then, like, can you reduce the amount of things you have on the cloud, knowing that it's just eating water? If you need to use AI, can you use it sparingly? Where do you source all of your equipment from, your computers and your phones and all of that sort of thing? So it's just really practical stuff. A lot of it is quite easy for a small business to do, because it might just be one person or a couple of staff. Like, it's not a big deal to change. I mean, changing a bank's annoying. I get it. You have to change all your payments and stuff like that, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. So yeah, I guess if I was looking at simple ways to kind of address my business's impact on the environment, that's where I'd start. Some of those just easy wins where it's just like, yep, banking, yep, super, and get them ticked off. And I guess also looking at that element of fair share in terms of either donating time, as we were talking about earlier, or can you donate money? I think it's really great for ethical businesses to have that as a backbone. Tricky if you're just starting and you're not yet financially stable. So that's sort of a caveat. But if you have it in your mind as something that you want your business to be able to achieve from the beginning, it's kind of easier to chart the course that gets you there, I suppose. And you can choose, organizations that align with the work that you're doing. So you can kind of go out there and be helpful in the industry that you're in. It doesn't necessarily have to be an environmental organization, I guess. I suppose this is a good spot to talk about paying the rent as well. Did you want to speak to that, Lucy?
Yeah. So I'm gonna come to that through a little pathway, which is thinking about. So when we think about the environment and environmental sustainability, it's the biggest thing is like the tangible physical things that we're like using as inputs and outputs. For some businesses, there's waste involved. So the inputs and the physical inputs and outputs. And so what you could do if you were really interested, is like map out the physical elements that make up your business. And B Corp, which is in our resources, they have some free stuff around this. So it's like knowing and mapping like the people you work with, community, the environment, governance, customers, and looking at all the physical elements of that and what environmental resources that they're taking up. And so just bringing awareness to that. There might not be things that you might not be able to do anything about some of that stuff, but it's helpful to be aware of it. And then there are some things like, oh, I could really change that or tweak that or ask a question around it. And so thinking about the breadth of these tangible things, like something that we're all doing is living on land, like living on the earth, and having country as one of the inputs to our business that's supporting and feeding and holding us. And so I'm sure many of you are aware of paying the rent, which is giving to local, ideally like the local Indigenous organisation of the lands in which you live, but it might be an Indigenous organisation that you feel passionate about. There is an official pay the rent website that you can go to, and they'll distribute it that way, or you could just give to a local Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander organisation that's on your country.
Yeah. Really important. I think it's just, yeah. And that sort of comes back to that financial piece that we were talking about before, and budgeting. Like when you're clear on your inputs and your outputs, you can just add this as one of them, and then, you know, tweak it up or down depending on what sort of flow you have of money coming in. But yeah, I like the idea of having all of these sorts of things as just a given in your business. It's not like, oh, if I get XYZ, then it's like, no, this is just something that I do, and the amount goes up and down depending, but it's a staple thing. Yeah.
And something when we were planning this this workshop, something that Koren and I spoke about was that it's okay to be imperfect, like as you said, Squarespace, or like there's just things that sometimes you have to be imperfect around. And again, it's like that embracing of like being human, being humble to being a very imperfect, flawed human. And even if that's like potentially part of like, can be part of your narrative or the brand or the story that you tell of like, hey, this is what I'm experimenting with. This is the ways that I feel like I'm doing really well with my environmental sustainability. These are things that I'm really struggling with. And so, yeah, having acceptance for yourself around the imperfect nature of it, and then allowing, by sharing about that, you allow others to also fumble their way through it.
Or someone might suggest a solution. Someone else might have figured it out, and, you know, they can help you. But, you know, we're living in a time where it's impossible to not have an impact. So I hear a lot of people say, oh, I can't talk about this environmental thing that we're doing because over here, this other thing that we're doing is not great. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the reality of life. Like that's the context we're all living in. And I don't think it's greenwashing if you're honest. Like, yes, we're really trying hard. An example of this is a client I worked with last year. That's a fertilizer company turning food waste into fertilizer. And they have had to package their product in plastic bottles, and they looked for recycled bottles, but the environmental impact of importing them from overseas was worse than using raw plastic here. And they cop criticism about it all the time. And it was like, well, let's just talk about it publicly. Put it in your FAQs, put it on the product pages, make socials posts about it, put it in your newsletter. Like, let's help people understand that, yeah, we know, and we've looked into it, and it sucks. This is the best, worst option right now. And it's like, I think it helps to build trust, because people are like, wow, you're really thinking about this, and you're not going to lie about it or hide it or pretend it's not a problem. You're just going to bring us on the journey of what you're trying to do. So I think there's kind of power in that honesty as well. Yeah. But one thing, Lucy, you said when we were planning was when a big part of all of this for you is that connection back to nature. And I just thought, oh, that's so beautiful. Like, you know, we can talk about all of these sort of esoteric things, but like the environment is all around us. It exists. Like, would you like to kind of talk to us a little bit about that, the environmental sustainability side of just connecting with nature?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me that. Yeah, I guess when we care about the environment, it's beautiful to enjoy it. You know, like with it to spend time with nature, giving it your energy, your presence, focus, and receiving its benefits in return. And I really believe a lot of my view, the way that I view the world these days, is through the lens of nature, and if I can learn as much from the way that the systems and the ecosystems and the way that cells work or plants work or soil works, like that's and if I can embody that and apply it into a business sense, then that to me is like helping the bigger systems of the world feel more natural, slightly, if that's possible. And also introducing that to other people as well? Like, what's the energetic resonance of like saying, even just in an email saying like, don't get back to me for a week, like, you know, no rush, or like the knowing that, like, I look at old growth trees are like, no, like they're like kinky to me. They're so beautiful, like this old, this old, you know, the slowness, the bigness of it. And so I try and like, you know, adopt a sense of slowness and calmness to my nervous system. And if I'm then embodying that in ways that I can, in interactions with people, how am I helping other people and their nervous systems, or the way that they're working to slow down and be slowed down this crazy world? And can we get more closer, like one tiny minuscule step closer to geological time rather than capitalist time? So I use nature very much as a guide in the way that I shape myself and my business. And I'm aware of like the taking of that too. Like, I don't want it to all be like, I'm learning from nature, I'm taking from nature. So I also try to give back where I can as well. And sometimes that's singing to the trees, or, you know, tending to a garden, or picking up rubbish, or things like that too.
But yeah, and it's a good reminder. Like, I often think, you know, because I sit at my computer at my kitchen table normally, looking out over my garden, working, you know, with these brands who are working to make the world a better place. And then I'm like, I actually need to go out there and just stand out there and be reminded that this is what it's all for, you know, like you get so bogged into computer world or whatever. It's very refreshing to go outside with bare feet and just stand and be like, oh, this matters. This is why we're here. This is why we're doing what we do, kind of thing.
Well, and thanks everyone for the comments in the chat and for your reflections. Thank you. Let's wrap this up. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it so much.
So good. Yeah, this was sort of a wild idea that we had. We're like, let's give this a go. And I've really enjoyed this, and I've loved the interaction here at the end, and your beautiful comments. And I always gain so much wisdom when I listen to you, Lucy. So this has been really great for me too.
Yes, me too.